Hello, everybody.
And we are live.
All right. Thank you very much, John. Welcome everyone to this work session on December 10th of 2020, designed to discuss the referendum considerations and consider what we have as far as a levy and a possible bond for next year. I think at this time, am going to turn the discussion over to Superintendent Lansfeld.
Hey, thank you, Chair Stivlin and fellow board directors. We have a presentation ready to go. It was originally going to be more about the community design team findings and the priorities that came out of that group. But as we process this as a leadership team, we thought we need to back this up just a little bit because we do have a lot of new people coming in, and we want to make sure that everybody is educated about this process, possible priorities, and what this will look like. After tonight's presentation, we will be building more timelines. But if we want to go to the next slide, the purpose of tonight's discussion, again, is to review district current and future needs related to finances and facilities, to gather feedback from board members and establish next steps in this process for a referendum. And with the timelines, we will take your input at the end of this presentation and find out what questions you have, what information you need, and that will help us in future planning for more work sessions and presentations. So finance needs and facility needs. Our district has an expiring operating levy that's just a little over $12 million coming up that we need to go out for a vote next November. And other considerations, we have increasing operating costs. We would like to provide our students program enhancements, and we have technology needs. We're one of the few metro area districts that does not have a tech levy. And one other big consideration that's not on here is a pandemic. And with the pandemic, that has also created some needs and with our finances. Facility needs, we have space needs coming up, specifically on the south end of our district. Our district's 35 miles long. We have a lot of overcrowding in several of our schools. That includes Brookview Elementary, Lake Elmo Elementary, and Oakland Middle School. Projected growth in the cities of Lake Elmo and Woodbury. If you just go driving around the neighborhoods, you can see a lot of development starting up. And then we have schools that need facility improvements as outlined within the community design team plan. So with that, I will turn the next few slides over to our Director of Finance, John Tyne.
Good evening, Superintendent, Board Chair, and Directors, future and present. So it's a real pleasure for me to be here tonight and to introduce myself to you. I'm not exactly new to the district, but I am new considering that I started on December 1st. I have a kind of a long history in education, as you can tell just by looking at my picture. It's not my first time around the block. Understanding the financial needs that we have in the district, first of all, I just want to touch base on how important the referendum dollars happen to be. And the referendum dollars are used to finance what takes place in the classroom and helps pay our teachers, pays for transportation, the operating costs of the district. To tell you how important it is, it's kind of like a family. If you lost the referendum or did not have the referendum, it's kind of like a family making around $50,000 a year and taking a $6,000 cut in their salary. It's very significant, and it really would affect what happens. Also, capital projects, which we talk about, are paid for right now out of the general fund. And one of the topics they're going to talk about a little bit later is technology and how designating specific technology funding would free up some dollars in the operating referendum. There, you can take a look at the pie chart. The majority of the money that we receive in this district is in the form of state aid. I just will put it at about 70%. Local levy is about 25%. Federal aid is very small in this district. It's only about 2%. And in many districts, it's quite a bit higher. In many parts of the country, it's higher, especially in the southern states. Voter approved referendum is 12 million. Non-voter approved, and you might ask what those are. Those are OPEB, post-employee benefits. They are OPEB obligations, QComp, and long-term facility maintenance. Could you go to the next slide, please? If you wanted to take a look at how the revenue shows up, the red bar on the chart is for the referendum, and that's optional and it's voted on, and it's going to be expiring. Unless we take a vote in November, it's going to expire and the district revenue will reduce by $12 million. The local option is really an amount that's been set aside by the state, and the local school board can take action to approve 300 and another 420. And that was put in place because there are some districts that were not receiving local support and couldn't pass their referendum. And then the local school board revenue is the OPEB, teacher comp, long-term facility. It's very important that we pass the referendum, or that it be from my point of view, the #1 priority. If you wanted to get an idea of just how the levy is certified, there's a MDE levies limitation page 20 on the MDE page. It's quite long, over 5,000 lines, and it has 40 pages, but it does lay out exactly where every dollar comes from. And if you're interested in that, I could help direct you to it so that you could take a look and probably bring yourself up to speed. Also, there are adjustments that are made each year because we make estimates on how much we're going to levy, how many kids we're going to serve, and I think that's going to be somebody else's topic tonight, so I won't get into enrollment, but it's very, very important to the district. I'll leave it at that.
How you doing? I'm going to talk to you a little bit about technology and the need for a technology levy. I think these unprecedented times we're in have really demonstrated the need to have computers and devices for all of our students. There's been a lot of talk about that. And I also think that this is a really good time for us to recognize that we as a district have struggled to fund technology. We have used the fund balance, we've used grants, PTA support, and of course we have a portion allocated to us from the general fund. And in addition to that, I think as a district from the board on down have just been very careful stewards of the technology funds that we have. But properly supporting technology moving into the future means that we're going to need to properly fund the technology that we have and we expect our students to have access to. Our technology plan lays out our needs and the cost for those needs. And a good technology levy could really help to fully support those needs. So where we're at today is we're currently funding technology in the district at a cost of approximately $1.3 million to the general fund. Where we would like to be is around $3.1 million. And with a technology levy, not only could we achieve that 3.1, but we could release the 1.3 back into the general fund to support other areas of the budget in the district. If we look at this on our per student allocation, we're currently at about $155 per student, which makes us absolutely one of the lowest districts in terms of how well we fund technology. Most districts you'll find are somewhere in that $340 to $400 range these days. And so our target would be approximately $370 per student. And then, so that all comes down to how many students we have, right? And I'm going to turn it on over to Mark to talk to you about enrollment.
Good afternoon. I'm Mark Drummerhausen, the new Director of Operations here for the Stillwater School District, and just want to take a minute to introduce myself and just say I'm looking forward to working with all of you here in the future. I'm just going to take a few minutes here just to talk about enrollment projections, and then some of our space needs now, and then looking into the future. So some of this next few slides is based on Hazel Reinhardt's demographic study, and she did a board work session report on October 8th. So I just pulled some of the highlights from that presentation just to talk with you here this afternoon. If you'd like more detail about this, please visit the October 8th work session. Hazel does a wonderful job. So looking at where we're at, both 5 years and 10 years from where we are in last school year to 5 years, it's broken down into elementary, middle, and high school. And you can kind of see the increases that she projects us here for the 5-year projection. And then the bottom one is the 10-year projection. So over the next 10 years, our elementaries would increase by 49 to 190 students across all 7 elementary schools. Middle schools would increase 108 to 222 students across the 2 middle schools. And then our high school would gain 323 to 388 students. You can kind of see that 5-year, 10-year projection out. Now we'll break it down by level. So as we start in the elementary, you can see all the schools listed on the left. The bolded column is where we were last school year with our October 1st numbers. And then based on Hazel's projections, you can see all the way out 5 years to 2024, 2025, and what that projection are for those specific buildings. The schools that are circled in yellow would be the buildings that are projected to be over capacity by the 24-25 school year from an elementary standpoint. Moving on to our middle schools, the same thing, our schools are on the left. The bold is where they are now. If you look at where our Stillwater Middle and Oakland is for last school year, and then you go 5 years out to 24-25, it basically flips. One school in the 900, one school in the 1200s, except it flips where Oakland now is the school that is over capacity and has 1200 students. And then Stillwater Middle would have around 900 students is what Hazel's projecting 5 years out from now. So those are the projections. Here is just a slide for your reference to look back at the capacities for each one of our schools from all our different levels. And we can talk more about this later, but this is just a slide to reference back of what the projected numbers are to what the capacity is for each one of our schools. So with that, I'm going to turn it over here to Carissa at this time to talk about our survey results.
Hello, everyone. Well, this is hot off the presses, and I will admit we haven't even had much time to process this information yet. So what I'm sharing with you today is a very high-level overview of the information we received from Morris Leatherman. Morris Leatherman conducted a survey for us to try to help us understand the hit that we took to our enrollment this year, what that really means for us longer term. So you probably have heard we lost about 270 students this year, largely in part to the pandemic and families really looking for an option for a more consistent schedule than what we could offer. And so we had Morris Leatherman reach out to those families, as well as those families within our district who opted for 100% online learning. So you'll see on the left side of the screen, there were about 2,300 students who chose 100% online learning this year. And when they reached out to those, they found that about 66% are likely to return to our schools post-pandemic. So they're planning to come back and actually sit in chairs again when all this goes away. About 40% expressed interest in an online learning program to continue post-pandemic. So they're really loving their online learning experience. It's working for their families, and it's something that they would like to possibly move into long-term. So that's really helpful information to us as we're trying to figure out both how to plan for online learning in the future and also what that means enrollment-wise in our buildings. If we're going to lose, those students to the actual physical structure and they're going to be moving online, that would obviously free up some space for us. We had approximately 650 students who left our district for other options this year. And then, as you know, some others did come in. So that's where we get that 270 number. But of those who left, about 60% indicated that hybrid learning was the major factor for their decision. And that's kind of what we had expected. So that was good news, that it was really about hybrid learning and just that consistency and model that they were looking for. About 50% are expressing an interest in returning to our schools post-pandemic. when Peter Leatherman sent this information to us, he said this is really positive news. Usually when families leave you for other options, you get about 10% who might be interested in coming back at some point. So to have 50% interested in coming back is really a good number. So they said we should be feeling good about that. And our next step with this is, again, we just got this information later yesterday. We're going to be meeting with Peter to dig a little bit deeper and understand what this really looks like at a grade level, as well as maybe even geographic areas of the district to help us figure out, again, who's going to be showing up with a desk and who's going to be maybe showing up online to help us in our planning. And we would love to have them come back and present to the board as well. Melinda, I think you're muted.
Okay, just so people understand what a levy is and what a bond is. A levy is for learning and a bond is for building. So a levy, that is paying for what is happening in our classrooms. Some people equate that to textbooks, tubas, and technology. Just for some examples, it's for supporting students, teachers, other staff, maintaining class size, which has been a very important priority in our district, for supporting strategic plans, social emotional learning, and mental health supports. Bond, we have space needs for possible expansion at Brookview Elementary. Lake Elmo Elementary has been considered to be rebuilt, possible new elementary in the south part of our district, as well as some space needs coming up at Oakland Middle School. So levy is for learning and a bond is for building. So tonight we're just providing you a high level view of what we're looking at for possibilities and priorities for this upcoming fall. We have some referendum options for your consideration. 3 of them. There's an operating referendum that's a little over the $12 million that will be expiring, that we would like to go out for a vote this November for operating expenses. November 2013 is the last time that it was approved. That's 8 years ago. Our last chance to renew is at the general election in November, this upcoming fall. Possible bond referendum. Some decisions need to be made on that. It's for building construction, last approved May 2015. And we have some options on this. We could look at our general election next November or special election in February, April, May, or August. Those will be on some upcoming timelines. And then the last consideration will be a capital projects referendum, capital and or technology expenditures. That's the possible tech levy that we are proposing. It's not currently utilized by our district. We are one of the very few districts in the metro area that does not have a tech levy. And with our current pandemic, we have realized how important technology is for our students and our staff. General election this November, we could go out for it, or again, a consideration at special elections, possibility in February, April, May, or August. Okay, so next steps. We need the school board to consider a levy request. Will it be a straight renewal, a little over the $12 million, or renewal plus additional funds? We know things, programs are increasing in price, possible program enhancements, a tech levy. Consider a bond request. When will we do that? This upcoming fall or one of the special elections? And what projects should we include? We have secured some firms to help us through this process. Baker Tilly is our community engagement firm. They will be working with us to set more detailed timelines to provide our school board and our public. And we are asking them to also complete some surveys, hopefully later this winter and then late spring, to find out what our community wants and what they would like to see on the ballot. We have Ellers as our municipal services firm. They will be analyzing the tax impact so they can share out that information to our families within our communities. to know what it would cost each family. And then Kraus Anderson is our construction firm. We have John Hunick here tonight that can help answer any questions. To consider bond projects for costing and planning with, again, the possible expansion with Brookview Elementary, the Lake Elmo needs, possible new elementary, Oakland Middle School, space needs, as well as facility improvements at other sites across our district. So at this time, we would like to ask the school board members, what additional information do you need from us, and what questions do you have?
Great, thank you for that awesome information. I guess I will entertain comments, questions. Who wants to go first? I see Allison Sherman, go right ahead.
And just right off the top of my head, one thing that would be helpful for me is when we talk about a renewal, I think the community often thinks, what do we need to maintain all of our existing programming and services? And I know that the board has been stuck in this rut of kind of having to annually cut budgets pretty significantly. So maybe instead of calling it like a renewal of existing funding, it's a renewal of existing programming. And so we look at, it would be helpful for me. The last thing I want, I guess, is to renew a levy, and then we're not really getting ahead of the budget cuts that have been kind of strangling some of the different programming in our district.
We can provide that. Thank you.
Director Pelletier?
Chair, thanks for the presentation, all of you. I have a question. Maybe it's something that I feel like I've learned in the past 4 years that I want to state. Hopefully this, I guess I don't know who to ask. Perhaps either Mark or John. The one thing that I believe occurred was when we did some of our previous bond work, we worked within the current classroom size ranges. We didn't address ranges at that time. I'm not here to criticize that, but I am wondering if it's not really the right time now, as we're not there yet. We're just beginning these discussions with regards to the bond and building and capacity, that if we really do want to at some point start considering classroom sizes and where we are with our classroom sizes, that if we build it and we don't address it and we want to decrease those ranges, if we don't do it, if we don't think about it on the front end, what does that mean after the fact? So I guess that's something that I think they might need to go hand in hand. I hope they do anyway. So I don't know who wants to speak to that, but
I can take, or go ahead, Melinda.
I just wanted to add to, for Director Pelletier, just so the school board knows, there was a survey, I believe, completed 2019 for community. The survey results indicated that as many as 77% of respondents would support a property tax increase for the purpose of expanding social emotional programs or maintaining current programs. And more than 70% also supported expanding the career pathways at the high school, enhancing safety and security, and maintaining or reducing class sizes. So there's your class sizes. Go ahead.
In terms of the capacity, I mean, literally, I could probably spend a half an hour to go through all the intricacies of elementary and secondary. I'm just going to touch on it now. If you'd like to do a work session later of some sort to really dig in on why I used the numbers we did and really tease that out. I did use the current staffing ratios that we are right now from a secondary standpoint, which is 33 students per classroom was the ratio that I used. So if you do change the staffing ratios, then that would change capacity based on that. From an elementary perspective, there are 3 different ratios. There's a K1 ratio, which is smaller. There's a 2-3 ratio that's in the middle, and then there's a 4-5 ratio that was bigger. So I used the middle one of 2-3, but within that, there's ranges of high-low. So depending on how many kindergarten classes versus 5th grade classes you have, changes that capacity number. And if you're at the higher end of the range or the lower end of the range, again, I can get into that later. but I tried to use the middle of the road for elementary and the straight up staffing ratio for our secondary capacity projections.
Yeah, and thank you. And I know that's a huge conversation that we don't have time for today, but I did want to just make that statement that just for the new board members, we've got, a lot of new board members here, so that they definitely go hand in hand as we kind of plan our facilities. So thanks, Mark.
Carissa, go ahead, jump in.
Just as a follow-up to what I think Jen asked the right question in that we are presenting this as a total package so you can see how everything is interconnected. So if you were to go out in a levy and ask for some extra dollars for class size reduction, that would impact what you'd want to be considering for a bond. So instead of having this conversation in isolation about a bond or about a levy, it's really important to be thinking about how it all plays together to create that package.
And I just want to add, the last time that we went out for a bond, it was focused on grade configuration changes for preschool, to have those classrooms at every elementary school within our district, 1st through 8th middle school programming, and a 9 through 12 high school with enhanced classrooms such as improved science labs. We added the Pony Activity Center, additions to the high school, construction of Brookview Elementary, and a variety of improvements across the district. So that's what occurred during our last bond.
I just want to jump in really quick to say thank you so much for saying that, Jennifer, because this has been a question that's been on my mind. I know we've talked about this many times over the years, and I think it's important to think about it right now because, as you just said, Melinda, this is an operating question and a bond question. It's both, because if you reduce the class sizes, then you need more teachers. So that's a levy question, right? So that speaks to the increasing the levy. But if we need more space in the buildings, then that goes to the bond question. So this is the perfect time for us to talk about it. And I think we need to look at those class size ratio numbers and see if there's a way for the board to maybe looking at reducing that number, so that we can adjust it. I thank you so much for bringing that up. I couldn't agree with you more. That's fantastic. I've seen Matt Unken waiting patiently. Go ahead, Matt.
Just a question about the technology levy. How many years would that be for? And what would be, like, on an average taxpayer, what would that be a raise of?
Yeah, so those are items that need to be studied in terms of what are the criteria for the levy that we would go out for, and we won't have answers for that today.
That's where our municipal services firm would come in, and we're taking down your questions now, and we can have them provide that information.
Yeah, right questions though.
Yeah, go ahead, Director Riley.
Thanks, Matt. I had that same question. And to add to that, I would like to understand how frequently tech levies are renewed. How easily are they able to come back in case we get our spending up there? Are we going to be able to carry it through? So that's kind of where I'm at. Not that I don't think it's good, John. I just
No, absolutely. Well, and I think we've all known the need is there. This is no surprise to anybody. So now we just have to figure out if and where it fits in our ask of the community.
Can I just ask, since it was brought up, is the tech levy the only way that we can increase funds for technology specific? I mean, wouldn't it also be something we could ask for in the operating levy?
Mm-hmm. And currently that's basically how we fund technology, right? As it comes from our general operating fund. Right. So the nice thing about the tech levy is that they often experience high levels of support within community, and then they free up operating dollars to go back to the classrooms in other ways.
Okay. I guess I personally am just a little concerned about the idea of having 2 or 3 questions on a ballot for people to give a choice. So I'm going to pick one, right, and maybe not the other 2. But if it's dedicated funds for technology and people really want to support that, then that could be definitely an advantage, I guess. Something to think about. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I saw lots of hands up earlier. Let's see, let's go to Bev.
So I had another question about technology as well. And so it would really be good for us to have some really deep information about how technology needs have changed as a result of what we've been experiencing with the pandemic. I just feel as though we might be poised as a district to, I mean, I just, it's possible that our voters would see that we really have a need. It's not, you know, technology is not a frivolous thing anymore. And it has equity implications as well. And so the more detail we can get about that, I think as we go forward, the better. And I'm not even sure if we're gonna, you know, I mean, how much of the information are we gonna have? Because, you know, there are things that are gonna have to play out through the course of the rest of the school year in regards to the pandemic. But those are some of the statistics that I would like to see.
Director Weisberg.
I know that the partnership plan is funding basically the beginning of the Pathways program. So if we could get information on what those needs are going to be, because I think that would be something that we would probably have to levy for also.
Right, I think we'll have some ongoing costs associated with continuing and expanding the Pathways work. I think the biggest piece for me about the Pathways work is I think there's a real need for looking at our class period schedule at the secondary level so that our students would have opportunities to take more electives. Because right now, I think most people understand it. There's just not enough time in the day to be able to take all the electives that people want to take before they graduate. A lot of kids are having to take their gym class online, which is, you know, it's not ideal. Anybody else have comments? Katie, go ahead. Director Hockert, go ahead.
Thanks. So my question also kind of goes back to the technology piece, but more looking at the online learning aspect of this. Listening to Carissa Keister's comment about how many of our online families are interested in continuing online. Is there something that the district is that something the district is looking into? Are there plans for that? And also, how would that be funded? Would that be coming from a tech levy, or would that be operating levy money? Kind of how does that all work? And also kind of moving forward, do you see the desire for online learning to continue long term, or is it just kind of the hot new thing that families are into because it's an option this year? So those are my questions.
I think Dr. Cherry is joining us now to answer them.
I know right now that we're collecting these questions, and we'll come back at another time, and we would love to present the board on the work that we're doing. To answer, I guess, just an overall question is online learning is not going away. This is not just a hot topic right now. We have information that tells us that families will continue to see a place for online learning into the future. And so our district right now is working on a plan on how we roll that out in a very wonderful way for our students and that our system can support. And so with that, as you had indicated, comes funding. But what we imagine we'll be able to do rolling into the new year is that we would be able to use existing funding, at least in the startup.
I guess quick follow-up, sorry. Also, would that online school be available for elementary through high school, or would it just be focused on high school, middle school? Because I know elementary is it's a different ballgame altogether.
Yeah, we were able to ask our families that are currently engaged in 100% online learning if they believe that they would want to return in an online format. And we did have a significant number at all grade levels, K through 12, indicating that there is an interest there. And so our pursuit is a K-12 offering.
Director Potacek?
Yeah, mine's kind of related to what Katie just said, but it really goes back to Carissa, your slides, and a couple real easy, quick questions. When did Morris Letterman do that survey? date wise? Just give me a month if you can. Was it
Yep.
a month ago?
Yeah, it was in November. They actually just finished up calling, I want to say about a week and a half ago.
Okay, so
And
it's
just pulled
fresh.
through, it's fresh data, hot off
Okay.
the presses.
Good. Here's a couple questions that quickly come to my mind, and I think they really, and I'm just looking at it from a building standpoint, building needs and rooms and classrooms and that sort of thing. Obviously, there's others, but if those survey results prove realistic, they come to bear, we're talking about 40% of the kids right now who are on online learning are kind of saying they want to stay with it. At least our family or their parents want to. Now, if we did that, that comes out to 920 kids. So I'm saying that could have, depending whether that's secondary or whether it's elementary or whether it's in between, that could have tremendous impact on facility needs. Then the second part of what you had on that same slide talked about approximately 600 or 650 students who left our district. And I think, well, I jotted it down. Dale gave us the figure this morning, and I think it was 753 students were lost. Is that correct?
I'm not sure where that figure came from. That might be the very most recent. So the number that I shared with you is the one that we had when we gave the information to Morris Leatherman to make their phone calls. So that would have been probably very early in November that we pulled the data. So it could be just a change from then. I'm not exactly sure where that came from. There's Dale.
The number I gave this morning was projected ADM end of the year based off of our October 1, which was 273 less for funding purposes. So.
Okay, thank you. So if I go either one of those figures, if I go Dale with what you gave us or what Carissa gave us, the figures Carissa gave us were roughly 650 students who left. So if you take half of that, which are projected to return, that's another 325 students. So I'm saying easily, it doesn't take much to get over 1,000 students or more. And I'm saying if you figure roughly the cost of that, it could have a huge effect as well. So I'm saying when you talk about facility needs, I think you got to keep those kind of figures in mind. And Mark, you look like you're anxious to respond.
No, I think you hit it right on the head. Not one of these slides you take in isolation. The reason it's presented together because it's a big picture and they all play in together in terms of our Hazel Reinhardt projections of what she's saying with the survey results about 100% online students. If we do offer some sort of program, does that offset some of the projection growth? Then you look at the students that left our district and come back, and that's the kind of work that we need to do next is dig into those results and saying, okay, of those 900 and some kids, how many are elementary? How many are middle school? How many are high school? Can we do a breakdown even in terms of, what building they potentially could be at and look at it from that standpoint, but really start to dig into those results and then start to develop a plan from there. But literally, I think Carissa got the results yesterday and trying to turn those around in terms for this meeting in order to try to give you the best projections we possibly can.
Okay, and just before I leave, one more that's kind of related to that. In the looking at the statistics, particularly at the middle schools, I was talking about how Stillwater Middle School and really Oakland would flip. But it seems to me when that was talked about earlier, they also talked about the possibility if you wanted to realign those without adding additional facilities, you could take a school like Bayport Anderson and just align them and where they go, etc.
That is a possibility, and that's a further conversation down the road. But as we start to look at our middle schools and projected enrollments, that is something we're going to have to look at from a boundary committee perspective of how we want to do that and continue feeders. And if we do want to continue our feeder system, is starting to look at our current elementary enrollment and what would make sense to realign our middle school boundaries.
Okay, thank you.
I saw Matt. Did you get your answer? Okay. Well, let's go with Tina then. Go ahead, Tina.
Just to kind of double back on what Mike said, I know that, Anderson was shifted and kids were pulled out of Stillwater Middle to move over to Oakland. So with the open building spaces we have and the community response to the open buildings, I think the boundary committee is going to have to happen sooner than later to figure out what our space needs are going to be. And at that time, we can also look at space needs according to, lowering class size and to see if we could utilize it in that way as well. We have to do something that is going to be, conducive with the entire community, to get the entire community on board to get this through. And so I think it's important to look at that. I do have a question. The last meeting we had before we sent the survey out, I asked if we could do a question on magnets and if there's an interest in what type. Did that happen?
That didn't happen, Tina, and I'm not sure if that question was asked before. I think we had already sent the survey out at that time. I don't remember exactly when you had asked that question, but that's my recollection.
And we do have Baker Tilly that we will be meeting with, and they will be doing a community survey where we can bring up the possibility of asking those questions.
Okay.
And that one, Tina, I'm sorry, one more thing I'd say, that would probably be more representative of the whole community. The survey that we did right now was just of those families who have left. If we did one about magnets, I think it would be really helpful to do that district-wide to get a feel for those that are in the community that would be interested and those who have left. So I think that would probably be much better with the Baker Tilly questions.
Right. Timing on that is so that can happen sooner than later. I'm afraid of it being too late. And it wouldn't make any sense to do so. I think we need to figure out a way during this entire process to lure people back into our district and have programs in here that are attractive to compete with our charters and our magnet, or not, we don't have any magnets, charters and our private schools. So I would like to touch on that a little bit.
Director Weisberg.
Thank you. I know we had a presentation about this, I think last year, about the costs and changing the high school to a block schedule. So if we could get some more information about that. And then I don't know how people are feeling. I don't know if this was a question in the survey, how people are feeling about the quarter system that we're doing at the high school, if that's something that people want to continue. I know my own child is enjoying it. It sort of changes up from semester to semester. And if we did keep the quarter system, how that would affect the block schedule, because we were told how expensive, I think it was over $1 million that it would have taken to do the block schedule. So I don't know how, if we have a quarter system and we want to keep that, if that impacts it. But if we could maybe get more information on the cost of that too, because if that's something that the community is interested in, that would attract more people to the high school, that would be great too.
Mm-hmm. Director Petrie? You're muted. Yep.
Right. Sorry.
There you go.
So I just had a question about the timing of that Baker Tilly survey, because I think it's going to, at least for me, it's going to be hard for me to make some decisions until we get a really clear picture about what the community is willing to support. And so I guess I was just wondering, I know that we just engaged them last week, so it's a little premature, but I'm just kind of wondering if, Melinda, you can give us some idea about the timeline that you have in mind here.
Well, I'm glad you asked, Director Petrie. We are meeting with them tomorrow to put some things together, and they can develop a very structured timeline from now until we go out to a vote with what they can do and what we should be doing too.
Okay.
In the original timeline, Bev, it was to try to get that survey work done in December, January timeframe. So I know we are running into the middle of December. So I think the goal is to try to get the survey out as soon as possible. The one trick about that is we want to know what needs to be measured, right? So if there are things that the board wants to measure in that survey, now's the time that feedback should be given to Melinda. So to Tina's point of the magnet as a question, if there's other things that you feel programmatically should be asked in that survey, or even if there are things you want to test as far as bond possibilities, now is the time to start generating that list so we can get that on a survey.
Go ahead, Matt.
Talking about the magnets a little bit, have we had community members that have expressed interest in that? And if so, what kind of magnets are we talking about? Are we talking about technology one specific, maybe a medical one? Because I mean, those obviously would be questions that would need to go on that survey if we're going to send that out, and it definitely would need to go to the entire district. And another question to think of, or just something to be aware of, that's a lot of transportation cost, especially if you've got students going from one side of the district to another, depending on where the building is.
Can I answer?
Go ahead.
Yep. So I actually talked a little bit to our transportation coordinator, and I think if we offered a magnet in the third tier, it is much more doable, transportation and cost effective wise. But as far as magnet goes, I would like to see those questions posed to the community, see what the community is interested in. I just off the top of my head, I thought it would be really kind of neat to have a Pathways Elementary magnet starting in business model, or is it ag? Is it, I mean, what is it? I'm not quite sure what it would be, but I think it would be really neat to have something here, to attract into our district that they're not doing anywhere else in our district, so we could capture some kids that way.
Mm-hmm. And I think we had talked about the idea of having Spanish immersion expanded into Oak Park Elementary. I know we already have the dual immersion at Lake Elmo, but there's some definite advantages to having more students involved in something like that at a younger age, so that the program can continue to be sustained through the grades. And so if we had more space, more students doing Spanish immersion, that would be beneficial for the program as a whole. And so when we looked at possibly doing that at Oak Park, we looked at various different options for transportation. And I think if we did it carefully, I remember that it was only going to be about, I want to say like $75,000 in above and beyond to provide transportation for all of the kids across the district. It's about scheduling it right, is really what the key is.
One more point to what I was saying about pathways. I know some people get nervous about kids being stuck into one lane as they go. But as far as if it was a pathways type magnet, that is optional enrollment. That's not something you're doing across the district. So those parents that want to be involved in something like that, it would be, for those that are.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, one thing, Tina, that you probably want to elaborate a little bit more on, when Tina talked about adding a tier, what she means is when the buses go. So what would be built onto that, regardless of where it would be, is that would be an open spot in that, particularly elementary, if where you were doing that was there, that would be like a 9 o'clock or 9:30 start. So not all the elementaries would start and end at the same time. Is that what you had in mind, Tina? I think.
Yeah.
Any other thoughts? Oh, hey, Rachel, do you have your hand up? Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chair Stivlin. I just want to remind and comment on the Spanish immersion, the Amigos Unidos program. We're moving into our 4th year without transportation. And it absolutely has an impact on who has access to the program and who doesn't. So we do currently have a program that we are not providing transportation for. And it's the most common cause and reason why families can't participate that get in through the lottery system, because they try to work with other families and they can't access that. And I heard from one parent just today wanting to fill out the application, but transportation is a barrier. So just wanted to remind all of us of that.
Thank you. Director Pelletier, go ahead.
Thank you, Rachel. Thanks for those comments. I actually was going to say something similar to that. We have a lot of needs right now in this district, so we need to be cognizant of that. And I guess when Carissa, this might be a question for you, and I know that you were really kind of hot on this, which is wonderful. Where are we with actually having discussions, exit interview type discussions with families who have left the district or elsewhere? And I think it's, if we're going to find out where we need to be, it's critical to find out where we're at and why. So I think I really hope we're able to engage those families so we understand that component.
Yeah, thanks for asking that, Jen. We are doing exit interviews. The way that it's structured right now, it's a survey that's sent out when we find out that someone has withdrawn from the district. So it's the feedback we get is voluntary. People are responding to a survey, so it's not 100% rates of return by any means, but definitely can pull together some of that information and share that out at a future meeting.
Yeah, that would be really good to know. I'd love to hear that. Let's go to Katie.
Thanks. I kind of have two full questions. One, going back to the survey itself, is there any way to get data from when a survey is given to the district? Do we track the geographical location of the survey data coming in? And the reason I'm asking that is looking at if there is particular interest for a particular school, where does that interest lie in the district, and how does that pull enrollment from those neighboring schools? I mean, if it's something that there's something where overcrowded schools in the South are really interested in a magnet, that would help alleviate maybe, but pulling from underpopulated schools, I guess, might exacerbate problems that we're already having in the district. So that's kind of one question. And then the other kind of question I have has to do with, do we have any information, or could we get information from the community in terms of an appetite for a bond, in looking at, we are coming out of a pandemic, hopefully, and an economic downturn. I'm really curious to know if people are still very interested in building, would they still support, or has that appetite changed? And would that then play into just the timing of that bond, for going in November versus maybe delaying a little bit into the spring, or what are kind of the pros and cons of the timing of that bond, since we are in rather uncertain times?
I can just respond. You're spot on, Katie. That's exactly what we need to measure with that survey that Baker Tilly is going to do. So a big part of that is the appetite of the community and what they would support or not support. So the bond question would be a huge one. We have data from 2019 that showed people were very willing to support us. In fact, it was incredibly favorable results, but a lot has changed since September of 2019. So we do have to re-ask those questions and see what's changed. And I was going to answer the first part of your question too, and now I've forgotten what it was. I apologize.
Looking at tracking the location of our survey answers.
Yes, so they do ask some demographic questions when they interview everyone in that survey, and they are able then to tell us kind of geographically, and even we'll get more data when we talk to Peter, but I think they can kind of tell us from the attendance boundary area, even where some of this data is coming from. So stay tuned, we'll share much more.
Thank you. Allison, go ahead.
My question was more, and I know the information, Carissa, was just hot off the presses here on the online option, continuing that post-pandemic. But I guess my curiosity is, how would administration suggest structuring that? And this would go to everyone here in the room, but how would we have to operate it like a school? Would there be one principal? Would they utilize existing curriculum? I mean, I would want to make sure that if we're going out for referendum funding, and that is something that when we do a survey that is, really in demand, I want to make sure it's funded so that it's not then, I want to make sure it's a sustainable program with long-term interest, so that we're not asking for money and then really kind of siphoning away from other programming. So.
Anybody want to respond to that?
And that you might not have that yet. I guess that would just be something I would want to know, just kind of like how it would be structured. And maybe that's more of a Melinda question.
Actually, I'll respond to that one, or I'll start and
Dr.
maybe
Terry question.
Part of the process of developing an online school is completing an application and working with the Department of Education on your plan for rollout. So those are all wonderful questions that you just asked, Allison, and all of the things that are also included in that application. So although I don't have answers for you this evening, those are all of the things that we're considering right now. And I absolutely agree with you that I wouldn't want to take away any of the resources that we need for other schools to create something brand new. It's not that we would want to create a deficit somewhere else to implement something new. It's responding to the need that we're seeing from our family, where we're seeing students very successful in an online environment.
Cool. Director Weisberg?
Thank you. Would the board be able to see the survey before it goes out so that we can see, you know, if the questions that we've discussed here and the questions that we feel like need to be asked are definitely addressed?
Yes, you should. Carissa, I'm assuming, yes, we should be able to see the questions beforehand. And we'll know more after we meet with them tomorrow.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Matt.
So going back to the online school piece, if we were to apply and get a licensure to do that, would that open us up to allow students out of district to attend? Because there are a number of high schools around the state. I shouldn't say a number. There are a few high schools around the state that do run their own online school program that do allow kids, even from up here, that can apply to get into that. Would we be able to do that as well?
Yes, we would be able to, and Stillwater has a great reputation. When you have a diploma from Stillwater versus somewhere else, it's a great thing to have. And so this is why we want to do this well and try to do it right. And we do need to do some planning. We did start this with, I believe, Rachel Stile and Bob Manning, 2 teachers at the high school, to get this going. And this is going to have to be done in phases, but we do want to provide this for our students, or we will be losing students if we don't do this right. And Dr. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Well, and I would imagine it would also add ADMs as well. I mean, so it may be an evening out process. We might gain as many as we might lose, but I just think that's interesting, because then we could certainly add students into our district that way as well, that are not living in the district already. So
correct. It might open up more seats for us to take in open enrollment, and those dollars would follow the student.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
As brought up in this morning's finance and operations working group meeting, Dell, you're here tonight, but with the students that we lost this year, it could be a loss of, with ADM, 2.4 million, I believe, with students. And we're still looking at the October 1st count, because we know students have been lost in every district across our state. They might look at last year's October 1st enrollment count to make up that difference for districts this year. But we do need to try to recoup that. That's a significant loss.
Sure. I'm going to bow out on that note, because I have training tonight and would like to do a couple things before then. So thank you for this. I appreciate being able to listen in.
Great. Have a good night. Director Pelletier. Oh, yeah. Director Pelletier.
Thank you. I think I'm in the dark a little bit here. My room just got really dark, so sorry about that. But I wanted to, I guess, just a statement, if I could. The preschool component, as we move forward with the bond, and again with everything being just so interconnected, you can't say enough about a program that has parents waiting up until midnight to try to get in this program. If you want to talk about something that is winning, that is clearly something that we need to continue to grow and always have that on our mind. And I think as we look at the bond component and our facilities and where these families are coming from, I just can't stress that enough, that this is a huge program. It's a huge area of opportunity for us. So just wanted to make that statement.
Director Pelletier, I couldn't agree more. I hear from people across the district that stay up that night that the preschool enrollment opens up, and it's filled probably within 15, 20 minutes across the district.
Exactly.
And just some good news on that front. We are changing that, so you don't have to stay up till midnight. Now I think the registration opens at 7 a.m. this time instead of midnight. I'm not sure where that came from, but we've made that more friendly for our customers
Because
now.
who wants to be up until midnight doing that? That's good. That's a good change. Thank you.
Director Weisberg.
Thank you. This may be a weird question, but will we have the same funding if we are able to do a distance learning program? Will we have the same funding per student as we do for in-person students?
It's my understanding that we would. I can confirm that with Dale if he's here, but there shouldn't be a difference. There isn't this year. It's the same ADM.
Thank you.
I have a question that I want to follow up with relating to the preschool. I've had a number of different community members ask me if our preschool program has been unnecessarily competitive with other existing preschool opportunities like local businesses in town. And I think what I understand from having talked to people is there was a huge need, and there still is obviously for preschool care in our community. And so we're not being unnecessarily competitive with local businesses. We are providing a need that wasn't being filled. Can somebody speak to that at all?
Go ahead, Krista.
That's an Annette question. She can really speak to that. I know they've worked hard to try to continue to build relationships with existing preschools, and it has never been our intent to take away from others. It's to fill the need, because there was a large percentage of kids who didn't have access. I'll be honest, I live down on the south end of the district. I have a little one turning 3, and there's nothing in my area. I'll have to be driving up to Stillwater or over to Woodbury, or even across the river to Hudson in order to find preschool for my child as a 3-year-old, because it's not offered in school. And then of course, when she's 4, it'll be right there at Afton, Lakeland. But there's definitely a need. There's a lot of kids in the community even still who aren't being served yet.
Yeah. And then the other thing I was gonna, just to clarify for sure, with those the programmatic capacity numbers that you presented earlier, Mark, those are not the total capacity of the building, but those are actually taking into account the preschool programming. Is that correct?
Correct. And so from an elementary perspective, you take out the preschool rooms, you take out the music room, the art room, special education rooms, intervention rooms, all the support staff, and then those are the rooms that are left times by, and same thing at a middle school, take away special education rooms, take away EL rooms, all the support, and those are the classrooms that are left. So yes, we do account for that.
Okay, great, thank you. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, a couple things. Number one, I think the question came up on would the state continue to fund online learning just like they do regular in-school learning? And Sarah, you'll remember this. This was a resolution we had at the Delegate Assembly. And what the question really came down to, and this is with the Minnesota School Boards Association, and it's something we want them to move toward, is to really double check how you're counting. Because right now it's seat time and it's days times. And Jennifer Cherry, I'm sure, is very aware of this. Those counts don't always work the same when you do online learning. So again, there is movement, but right now it's a big question mark whether they'll continue to do that. And the same question used to count them, how you counted snow days and that sort of thing was in there. But before I give the mic to somebody else, one other thing I want to mention, and that's something that Liz talked about earlier. And again, part of what we've talked about today, a lot of it's dream list, and I think that's wonderful and good. But I think also when you talk particularly about pathways, what I note more is career technical education in particular, one of the demises why that program isn't as rich as it could be is always been the schedule and the number of periods in the day. And so if you're really interested, you've got to come up with a system that's going to allow kids to take more electives. Then you will get a very rich program. It also can be more costly. But regardless, I'm saying that's a good question to raise at this point. Tap your community and see how much interest there is for enhancing the career technical education. I think they might understand that better, or traditionally vocational programs, or it can be all of the above, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And Liz talked about this earlier, and I think it's a very, very appropriate question to be asking people.
Yeah, go ahead, Liz.
Thank you. I just wanted to speak to the preschool question just as kind of a follow-up. Not only is the district not like directly competing, but has been an amazing resource. We had a student whose needs we could not address, and I contacted preschool teachers at the Early Childhood Center, and they came out, helped our family, and that family is now with the district because they were able to provide services that we couldn't. So not only was it extremely collaborative and helpful, but in addressing a huge need, but probably helping families have preschoolers that otherwise would not be served. So
are you, when you say we, are you referring to the preschool?
Yes.
Your preschool that you run in Marine?
Right. And it was,
okay.
It was a wonderful thing for this family, and the district was extremely supportive. So I just wanted to share that.
Yeah, they do a fantastic job. Go ahead, Bev. You're muted, yeah.
This might be sort of an obvious thing, but when we're talking about whether we would renew the operating levy at the current level or whether we would want to ask for something additional, I guess what I would like to hear from administration is, you know, and we all sort of have our own ideas about what it should be, but I would love to hear from administration what they consider to be the significant gaps. What are the ways that we could improve the delivery of instruction and provide those things that would really help make this district soar. And so I would just like to see that information.
I think that's great. Great comment and ask. We will be working with our leadership team, administrators, with feedback from staff on what our priorities are, and hopefully can make some recommendations and provide more information to the school board at future meetings. We know, as well as trying to continually improve to support achievement and growth for all of our students and to close those opportunity gaps. We do have a pandemic here, and we know we are going to need more of the social, emotional, mental health support, as well as catching a lot of our students up to where they need to be.
Mm-hmm. Director Sherman?
And my comment kind of is related to what Director Petrie just said is, and even though I know we need to ask the questions again, because the initial atmospheric survey is likely the world has completely changed since that was asked. But I think what I'd like to see is, if we know the community really wants social and emotional support, it's kind of creating that. What does that look like for the community so there can get some excitement and put some meat on that want? And it, tie that to a cost so that people can say, hey, they sound like they wanted, in the atmospheric survey, there was a huge need in certain grades to really reduce class size. It would be nice to be able to go out in our next question and say, okay, here's the cost to that idea that was supported. Do you still support it now? Because I think sometimes, like for class size, I personally would love to do that, but it is one of the more expensive things we can do. So I did kind of like that atmospheric survey pointed to some strategic needs that the community saw, not just an overall reduction everywhere, but then just going a step further and saying, okay, social emotional is going to cost this much. Do you still support it? Or just kind of trying to inch that forward for people.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Jen.
Thank you. Just have to drive this again one more time. I kind of loop that part of the conversation kind of loops back to where I started, but all of these things are so related. They are so related. So, that was a bit of a source of consternation for me with the last one. It's so easy to, hindsight is 2020. It's so easy to judge, and I'm not going to do that, but but I really strongly want to state that all of these things, whether it be extending class periods, adding class periods, or adding all these electives, or all of these things are so critically related to the facilities component. So, as we ask our community, what are we looking for? What do we want? Those are critical questions, and they're all critically related to the bond and what we do with our facilities. So I just had to say it one more time, and thank you. Great comments.
Yeah, and Director Pelletier, I just want to thank John Hunick just one more time for being here. He's our construction manager from Krause Anderson, but he's also a community resident, and he has helped us a lot with this to tie things together for our students and has been a great supporter of our district. So thank you, John, for being here tonight to hear this.
If we are over we were scheduled to end at 5. It is now a little bit about 10 minutes after 5. If there aren't any other further questions or comments, I think we can maybe just decide to wrap this up. Go ahead, Melinda, you want to?
I just want to say thank you for everybody being here tonight and being willing to collaborate and work together. We have a lot of work ahead of us. I think we're ready for this. The staff, our leadership team, the principals, they're ready to go, even in a pandemic. And just a quick reminder that there is an extra slide for the school board members in this presentation with supporting materials that I would recommend in all of your free time, just to take a look at the enrollment projections from Hazel Reinhardt, community design team work. There's a review of recommendations there. And residential survey from 2019 from Morse Leatherman on information where the district and our community happened to be at that time. And then our draft timeline of the referendum coming up. So thank you.
Great. Go ahead, Allison.
I was just going to say, obviously in an hour, we can't probably ask all the questions we might want. Do we, if we think of questions, should we send them to the chair, to Melinda, both, if we think of other questions? Okay.
Yeah. That would be great. All right. If there aren't any other questions or comments, thank you so much, everybody, for being here. This has been a really interesting and fun conversation. We're just getting started. This is a lot of work ahead, but I really look forward to seeing where it all ends up and how exciting this is for our community. So thank you so much for being here tonight. To be continued. Good night.